President, we felt the pain of Minister Sihle Zikalala. He's a master's candidate. Rather, he's got a master's. He's got experience in governance, but you have reduced him into a boy and deputy minister of an illiterate, matriculate white man. You are reminding us of the racist corporate sector where our brothers and sisters must account to white juniors, even though they've got better qualifications and better experience than them. We do not even recognize 1652, because by that time our forefathers were already enslaved.
Saying the scanner race stop net dar by a donkey. The next speaker on the program is Honorable Lonsu.
He said, you are a hard worker. You are a hard worker. He respects you. And you work so hard that you must have been tired when you didn't mention the work done by our president in your solar debate. But these people on the way out,
sit down, Chief.
You can make a noise.
Sit down, Chief.
Thank you.
Speaker. Thank you, Honorable Creator. The next member on the platform is Honorable Mashatsi.
Thank you, Chairperson. Greetings to the President and the Deputy President. Greetings to the Progressive Caucus. Hot from Africa. Honorable Zikalala, you are absolutely right that Africans must report African issues to Africans. But let us ask ourselves, those who ran to Americans to cry about Expropriation Act, are they really Africans? Do they genuinely believe in African unity? The Americans gave them platform, gave them what they wanted, and yet they remain here. Remain at the very land where they are privileged and they claim to be under threat. Where is Honorable Mackenzie's slogan now? Abahambe! Or does it only apply selectively? Mr. President, now that the Expropriation Act is in law, I had expected you to outline a clear program of action for its implementation. We cannot afford to celebrate symbolic victories while our people continue to suffer. While we articulate policies, our people are starving. They have no land to produce food, no resources to sustain themselves, and no means to break free from generational poverty. The land question is not just history, it's about survival. Look at Palestine. The war waged by the so-called Israel, it's over the land. Look at the DRC, the conflict between the Tutsi and the Houthi, it's about the land. And if South Africa reach the boiling point, it will not be about political debate, it will be about the land. So, Mr. President, it's time to act decisively. Implement the land expropriation without compensation now. We cannot wait indefinitely for the amendment of Section 25. We must abandon 1913 as a benchmark for the land reform because it legitimized the colonial theft. When the settlers arrived here, they didn't compensate the land from our forefathers. Instead, they killed them and took the land forcefully. So give us the good reason why we should give why the government must compensate them. Our history of this position did not just begin in 1913. It began the moment the foreign settlers laid claim to what was never theirs. And as UAT, we do not even recognize 1652, because by that time our forefathers were already enslaved. While we delay, our people remain landless, hungry, hopeless. Now it's time for action. No apologies. Yes, we don't apologize. Now it's time for justice. No endless negotiations. The land belongs to Africans. Implement now, Mr. President. Kadimambo.
The next speaker on the podium is Honorable Daniels. Over to you, sir.
Greetings, Honorable President Cyril Ramaphosa, Deputy President, Speaker of the House, and all honorable members. On behalf of the Patriotic Alliance, we are excited by the prospects of a 3% GDP growth as mentioned by His Excellency Ramaphosa during SONA. We are excited that our beloved country will now be turned into a construction site. And that is what we need to address the high unemployment rate in our country. Mr. President, my grandmother always said you must look at me when I talk to you. Mr. President, thank you for committing 940 billion rand to the infrastructure projects. Let job opportunities rain from our African sky. Let us guard against also evergreen contracts being afforded to the same companies for decades, including those of constructional engineers. Mr. President, adding 20 billion rand over 5 years to the Transformation Fund to support small and black-owned businesses is heaven sent. You said small and black. You didn't say small, you didn't say black. You said both small and black, Mr. President. Remember, the Triple BEE speaks to African in particular. We also have white small-owned businesses. We equally have got colored and Indian and black small-owned businesses. And because you say it's for small and black-owned, I trust that it will receive the attention it deserves. So that, Mr. President, the additional 20 billion can be implemented as a Rainbow Nation project benefiting black, white, Indian and colored people. Mr. President, I must admit from what I've noticed, you are indeed a complete show-off. You cited sterling work done by various ministers within your cabinet. And you are correct, Mr. President. The GNU is working. As the head of state, you have all the reason to show off. Who will not show off when things are working? In the PA, ons kinder van jou, Mr. President. And I quote my party president, the Honorable Minister of Happiness, saying,
The scanner race stop net daar. Baie dankie. The next speaker on the podium is Honorable Lonsi.
He said, you are a hard worker. You are a hard worker. He respects you. And you work so hard that you must have been tired when you didn't mention the work done by our president in your SONA debate. But these people on their way out,
Sit down, Chief.
you can make a noise.
Sit down, Chief.
But your military
Speaker Daniels.
I think we need a breathalyzer now.
Hey, Matata,
Over to you, Mr. Lonsi.
Commander-in-Chief of the EFF, South Africa is behind you, despite calls from the United States and Elon Musk, who are calling for your sanctions and calling you an international criminal. We want to remind you, President, that even Nelson Mandela was referred to as an international criminal, and only up until 2008 was he released from the terrorist list by the United States. Leaders like Gaddafi, Patrice Lumumba, Kwame Nkrumah, Thomas Sankara from Burkina Faso were all labeled criminals by the West. Stand firm, President. Being a criminal of imperialist forces is a badge of honor for our struggle for the liberation of our people. President Ramaphosa, in the 20th century, Chairman Mao develops and popularizes a concept called a paper tiger. A paper tiger, President, is something that appears powerful and intimidating from a distance, but as you get closer to it, it's harmless, it's fragile, it's powerless. It's just a paper made of a tiger. Your State of the Nation address, President, like the 7 you gave before that, reminds us of a paper tiger. You always make bold statements. You appear dangerous from afar, but when we pay closer attention, we see a paper tiger. Your ministers and premiers are all praise singers, Mr. President. All of them did not engage in the substance of your SONA. They did not defend your SONA. They were just looking for your applause and affirmation. Your chief whip comes and speaks about the National Development Plan. Yet former President Thabo Mbeki, who all of you like to quote, keeps telling you, Mr. President, the NDP is not a plan. Why? A plan requires clear steps, time frames, measurable objectives, and defined responsibilities at each and every level of government. Now, President, let me take you to Singapore. When Singapore gains independence in 1965, they implement the Economic Development Plan, focusing on industrialization, education, and infrastructure. This was not just talk, Mr. President. They created a strong manufacturing sector, which we don't have, upskilled their workforce, which you are not doing, and invested in technological innovation, transforming Singapore into one of the world's leading economies in a short space of time. This can't be said about the National Development Front. Honorable Premier of Limpopo, please don't be narrow. When we say post-secondary education, we're not just talking about universities. We're talking about TVET colleges. We're talking about training centers. Come on, Minister. The Premier of the Northwest. Okay. In Mamusa. If you go to Mamusa today, Batuba Runa, Batula Masipa, Bekeli Beke, because his failed PR stunt couldn't resolve the issue of sewage in the province of Northwest. I don't want to even talk about the Minister of Human Settlements. She stands here and claims to have resolved the issue of student accommodation in South Africa. Perhaps she doesn't know, Minister, there's a shortage of over 500,000 beds in South Africa. You don't just resolve it by taking money from VPS and buying yourself a coffee shop. President, I want to invite you just across the road, President. When you were busy delivering your SONA, students at CPUT were sleeping outside, President. On Monday night, I went to visit one of the students who were arrested. Please, President, on your way to your 20-bedroom house in Clifton, pass District 6 so that you can see this crisis with your own eyes. President, we felt the pain of Minister Sihle Zikalala. He's a master's candidate. Rather, he's got a master's. He's got experience in governance, but you have reduced him into a boy and deputy minister of an illiterate, matriculate white man. You are reminding us of the racist corporate sector where our brothers and sisters must account to white juniors, even though they've got better qualifications and better experience than them. But Mr. President, we are not shaken because we know that the faction of Helenzin wants to dump this GNU. It's just John Steenhuisen who is still enjoying blue lights even at the cost of his own constituency. Commander-in-Chief of the EFF, we want to show you that we're not just an opposition that talks. We have already presented before this parliament a student debt cancellation bill. We want this parliament to vote for that bill so that we can resolve the debt confronting more than 500,000 students in South Africa. Now, Mr. President, I don't know why you need a bill to give all students their degrees, because these people have completed all their academic requirements. Why don't you give them their degrees?
Your time has expired.
We came here to ask you and you said we've got an extra minute for 6 minutes. You gave me 5 minutes here. Not going to happen. It's not going to happen. We asked you and you said we've got an extra minute here. President, President, the simple point we're making, how will these students get employment if you don't want to give them their degrees? Give the students their degrees, give them their qualifications, give them their certificates so that they can be able degrees, Mr. President.
Leave the podium! Abba!